I was just kind of saying that I've been seeing a lot of, I've seen a lot of, there's a lot of good security experts in the Hex community, Richard Hart ecosystem, and I see a lot of kind of like disagreements. Nothing like, oh, these guys are arguing, but I see one guy say this is the best, and then one guy says this is the best, and it's almost it it is it's almost like you said once when I was on your channel, like nothing is truly secure. So it's almost like sometimes something can be overkill. And I had an interesting encounter with a woman where she realized she hadn't added any crypto to her wallet, but she realized she had made her PIN and her passphrase too complex. Where she was like, I don't like. She wasn't even able to like enter the PIN and the passphrase in her thing because it was she was like, oh, I'm going to be super duper secure. So like, it's interesting how it can really like that's a factor I hadn't really thought of where like you could make something so secure that you like screw yourself out of it.
Exactly. You should avoid doing that. I mean, I avoid saying you should do all those things. I don't want to be the person telling anyone what to do. I try to talk about what I've done and what I've seen other people do that's been successful. But me personally, we can have maybe a long time ago when I was first getting in security, it's like, what is the most secure way of doing this and this and this? And I've since just really relaxed and just left a lot of that behind because you can make it too complex. You can make it where you screw yourself. Like if you all these additional, the maximum security, that's kind of like it's so, the romantic dream of owning a farm, right? Oh, what if I was just a farmer and I could just walk out in the field, the meadow's so beautiful and I have all these animals. It's actually a lot of work to be a farmer. It's not that romantic. It's like the idea of it is, all these things, but it's really not that. It's a lot of work involved. So I think about max security like that too, where I don't go for max security. I go for what is the most amount of ROI? Like what's going to be the easiest way for me to get this thing done and the least likely for me to get hacked doing it. And that's what I applied to being a validator. I've seen a lot of people talk about, they've asked me like, what's the most secure way to do this and this and this on validator? I'm like, I don't even think about it. What's the most secure way? I think about it as what is a very secure way that's least likely to, if something goes wrong, like I'm still protected in all these ways, but I don't try to come up with like 100-character password and just like all these defense after defense after defense. It's just, you're going to make your life more complicated. You're going to really stop liking security and take away from your enjoyment of the product or the scenario, whatever you're trying to do. And you may even shoot yourself in the foot. You may forget that, crazy long password that's super complicated. I know every time I pick one, I have to type it on the TV with a little remote. I'm like, oh my God, please. Why did I pick this crazy password? Nobody cares about my Netflix password, stuff like that. So that's something that came with time. That definitely developed over time. Before I was like, I would research what is the most secure way to do all this stuff, and I'll set it all up, and I'd be very proud of that setup. And nowadays, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna like if I can be 98% secure, and there's certain things you need to like do a little bit extra stuff on that like really really matter. But most things, if you're 95% very very secure, you don't. Striving for 100%, their ROI just drops off a cliff from my experience.
Right. Drake says, you mean my seed shouldn't be spread across different continents
Exactly.
inside ice caves?
That is a super secure way to keep it. Well, then you got all these other complications. Like, okay, so who's taking care of that? Who's doing the maintenance? Who's making sure it doesn't melt? And like, who's getting access? It's like all that stuff too. So yes, that's a great example, Drix, of like, just make it secure enough where you can use the thing and don't have to worry about it. Like, don't go for like 110%. At least that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I like to tell people like, as long as I can sleep at night, but then it's like, what if someone's just stupid? So they're like, oh, I'm secure, but they're just ignorant, and that's why they're sleeping well at night. But I think, you learn the proper stuff, and then as long as you can sleep at night and like you don't feel, I don't know, you're at the grocery store and you're like, oh, seed phrase, what's going on with it? Like, it's like Archie S. Good to see Archie S. He said, "Be sensible." It's a balance. Definitely true, and it's like a spectrum. I think you've said this before. It's a spectrum. Not everyone's going to have the same. I don't know, like security plan or whatever. But I do say to people, I think what is like definitely necessary is the Trezor with the passphrase. That's what I tell people. Like, I think as long as you get that at the bare minimum, that's a that's a pretty safe bet.
Well, there's so many attacks that I can't, on top of my head, I just remember there being so many things, so many of the different attacks. There's a bunch of attacks on hardware wallets, but a lot of the attacks rely on there not being a pin set. And that's, yeah, if nothing else, we can take anecdotal evidence of there's all these vulnerabilities that come out in all the hardware wallets, and a lot of them can only be exploited if the pin is not set. So if you just look at that alone, then that could be, okay, what should I do? I should, set a pin on the wallet, always do that sort of thing.
I didn't even realize you could not set a pin. I didn't realize that. So yeah, that's something I'll have to make sure I emphasize as well.
But hardware wallets is one of those, so hardware wallets is like basically 2FA. Like you got to press a button, you got to do something before the thing goes through, just like you would on the phone. You get a code, authenticator app, blah, blah, blah. And then there is the secure generation of the seed words. So you don't have to worry about if someone was on your computer looking at your stuff, they could see you generate the keys. If you're doing it with MetaMask, copy and paste, store in text file, all that stuff. So those are the two angles primarily that hardware wallets are good for and take care of. But those are not the only two angles in security. That's just if you zoom out, there's like this whole like broad attack surface of your computer and your money and your crypto. And hardware wallets take care of that, secure seed word generation offline on the little devices, not your computer, which can be Trojan, blah, blah, blah. And it gives you that 2FA type of, I need to hit a button before transfers can occur and all that stuff. So that's what it takes care of. So there's so many, I know, and rightfully so, we talk about hardware wallet, like that's number one thing you should do in crypto, hardware wallet. Kind of, but there's this whole other thing. If you still click a link, if you still get, somebody who you think you trust, who's just a scammer, pretend to be that person on Telegram or Twitter or wherever, if you still follow their instructions and make their transfers, do all that stuff, the hardware wallet it's not meant to take care of that attack surface. It's only meant to take care of the secure password, seed word generation and the 2FA essentially on your crypto. So I think a lot of people focus on, because it's the easiest thing, right? Like buy a hardware wallet, set it up. It takes time, but it's like the simplest thing to convey. But then they forget about, don't download EXEs and run them. Torrents. Like had Staked Wealth on the show a while back. He wants to do another security AMA to talk about all the stories that he's heard from people still who have watched their stream, watched me and his stream, where he talked about how he got hacked and a bunch of crypto stolen from downloading a torrent that was a crypto Trojan and got a hold of his computer and all that stuff. And he's heard a lot of people say that they think the same thing happened to them. So yeah, don't download torrents. It's like one obvious thing, don't download torrents on your computer, which especially if you have a hot wallet, haven't locked MetaMask or not using hardware wallet, all that stuff. I mean, it sounds obvious, but there's people just want to transact, right? Like I get it. I just want to transact. I mean, I think everyone has a hot wallet of some sort. You can mitigate that by, not having all your funds in a hot wallet. You can mitigate it by hardware wallet. You can mitigate it by locking MetaMask and all that stuff too. But you really just zooming out from hardware wallet beyond that, there's so many different things to make sure you don't do, you're aware of, you be careful of. And computers are a huge way to that you need to pay attention to as far as getting hacked and stuff. So I don't know where you want to go in the conversation, but I think there's a ton of nuance even beyond hardware wallets that we can get into too.
Right.